Amara froze, her back to him. For the first time, her carefully built mask seemed to crack. She said nothing, but the tremor in her hands revealed everything. It was clear to Carter now her story was beginning, and he was determined to uncover it. The tension between Amara and Carter reached its breaking point one stormy evening. Rain lashed against the tall glass windows of the suite as thunder rolled above the city. Amara entered quietly, her cart squeaking slightly on the polished floors. She had hoped the day would pass without confrontation, but fate had other plans. Carter was waiting for her, not with his usual cold stare, but with documents spread across the table, newspaper clippings, old photographs, pieces of a puzzle he had painstakingly put together. "Amara," he said firmly, his voice low but steady. "Or should I say Amara van der Veld?" Her heart stopped. That name, her actual name, echoed through the room like a ghost. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. She set down the fresh towels she carried, her hands trembling. "I don't know what you mean, sir," she whispered. Though her voice lacked conviction, Carter leaned back, studying her carefully. "I've built my life on reading people. I know when someone is pretending. You are not who you claim to be. You're not just a maid. You're the daughter of a Dutch industrialist family that vanished after a financial scandal 5 years ago. Am I wrong?" Amara's breath caught in her throat. She had spent years burying that past, hiding it under layers of ordinary routine. And now, with just a few words, Carter had dug it all up. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. Then, with a voice barely louder than the rain outside, she answered, "You have no idea what you're talking about." But her defiance didn't convince him, it only confirmed his suspicions. Carter stood, strolling toward her. His presence was commanding, yet strangely gentle. "Why are you here, Amara? Why live like this? From mansions and private schools to cleaning hotel rooms? What are you running from?" Amara turned away, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm not running," she whispered. "I'm surviving." The words hung in the air like a confession. For the first time, Carter softened. He wasn't looking at a maid anymore, nor at a mystery to be solved. He was looking at a human being, carrying an unbearable weight. But his questions remained unanswered. And outside, unnoticed by them both, that same black car from the night before was parked across the street watching, waiting. The storm outside grew fiercer, lightning splitting the night sky, while inside the sweet silence hung heavy between Amara and Carter. She stood frozen, her chest rising and falling as she fought back the flood of memories his words had ripped open. Finally, Carter spoke again, this time softer. "You don't have to keep pretending. I've already seen enough to know the truth." Amara turned to him, her eyes glistening. "You think you know the truth? You've seen headlines. You've read stories written by men who never cared about the people they destroyed. My family didn't lose everything because of greed. We lost it because we were betrayed." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. Years of silence poured out at once. My father trusted the wrong partners. Corruption, lies, forged documents, everything pointed back to him. The press called us thieves, criminals, and frauds. But the real criminals walked free while my family was ruined. I was forced to leave my home, change my name, and live like I didn't exist. Carter's jaw tightened. He had spent his life navigating ruthless deals and betrayals, but hearing it from her lips was different. There was no arrogance here, no self-pity, just raw pain. "And now?" he asked quietly, Amara's hands clenched. "Now, the people who framed us, they found me." That call, I answered. It wasn't family. It was a warning. "They know where I am?" The weight of her words crashed over the room like thunder. At that moment, a knock rattled the door. Not the polite knock of hotel staff, but 3 sharp, deliberate raps. Amara's eyes widened in fear. Carter moved instinctively, stepping between her and the door. "Who is it?" He called out. No answer. Another set of knocks, louder, more urgent. Amara's voice shook. "It's them." Carter glanced at her, then at the door, calculating his next move. His instinct told him this was no ordinary situation. Whoever was on the other side wasn't here for a friendly visit. "Stay behind me," he ordered firmly. The knock stopped. Silence filled the suite once more until the faint sound of footsteps retreated down the hallway, but Amara knew better. They weren't gone. They were waiting, watching Doc Carter turn back to her, his eyes hard with determination. You can't keep running forever, Amara, but you don't have to face this alone. Not anymore. For the first time, she allowed herself to look at him not as a guest, not as a millionaire, but as someone who might actually understand what it meant to fight back. And in that moment, she realized her secret wasn't just exposed it, had dragged them both into a storm far bigger than either of them had imagined. That night, Amara didn't sleep. The storm outside had quieted, but inside her heart, a greater storm raged. She sat near the window of her small apartment, staring at the rain-soaked streets below. She knew the knock on Carter's door wasn't a bluff. Her past had finally caught up with her. The next morning, when she arrived at the hotel, Carter was waiting for her. He wasn't dressed in his usual suit. Instead, he wore a plain jacket, as if preparing for something less glamorous and far more dangerous. I made some calls, he said quietly. I know people who can look deeper into what happened to your family. If they framed you, there will be a trial. Maybe buried, maybe hidden, but it's there. Amara hesitated. For years, she had lived in fear of anyone uncovering the truth. But now, standing in front of Carter, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, the possibility of justice. Why are you helping me? She whispered. Carter's eyes softened. Because I know what it's like to be written off, to have people decide who you are without ever knowing you. And because sometimes the right thing is the only thing that keeps us human. His words struck her deeper than he realized. Together, over the next week, Carter quietly worked his connections. Files surfaced, old contracts, bank records. Enough evidence to reveal the web of deceit that had destroyed Amara's family. And though it was not a complete victory, it was a spark of truth against years of lies. But with each step forward, the danger grew closer. The black car returned more than once, lurking near the hotel. Anonymous notes slipped under Amara's. Door warned her to stop digging. Fear clawed at her, but this time she was not facing it alone. Then came the turning point. One evening, Carter arranged a meeting with a journalist he trusted, someone who wasn't bought by money or power. Amara sat across from the reporter, her hands trembling as she told her story for the first time, her real story. The betrayal, the loss, the years in hiding. Every word she spoke lifted a weight off her chest. Even as tears fell, when the article was finally published, it sent ripples through the business world. For the first time, the truth about the van der Velt family came to light. Those who had buried their crimes squirmed in discomfort, while others began to see Amara, not as a disgraced daughter, but as a survivor who refused to stay silent. The hotel staff who once mocked her now looked at her differently, some with shame, some with admiration. But Amara no longer cared about their opinions. She had learned the hardest lesson. Dignity isn't given its claim. As for Carter, his role in her story remained quiet, almost invisible. He didn't seek credit, nor did he parade his involvement. Instead, one evening as Amara prepared to leave her shift, he approached her in the lobby. You have a future again, he said softly. Don't waste it hiding. Amara looked at him, tears glimmering in her eyes. I won't. She walked out of the hotel that night, not as a maid, not as a fugitive, but as someone reborn. The city lights stretched endlessly before her, no. Longer threatening, but full of possibility. And Carter? He returned to his empire, but something within him had changed as well. For the first time in years, he had been reminded that wealth and power meant nothing compared to truth and courage. The story of the maid who spoke Dutch in front of a millionaire wasn't just a story of secrets, it was a story of resilience, of injustice challenged, and of the quiet strength hidden in people the world too often overlooks. And for those willing to listen, it carried a lesson. Never underestimate the silent ones. Behind their quiet eyes might live a story powerful enough to shake the foundations of even the richest empires. In the golden hallways of a five-star hotel, where every corner smelled of wealth and perfection, a single phone call would rewrite destinies. A young maid, dressed in her crisp blue uniform, answered the phone in a language no one expected. Standing behind her, a millionaire guest froze, his curiosity instantly awakened. Who was this woman, really? Why would a hotel maid speak Dutch so fluently? What started as a typical workday would soon unravel into betrayal, hidden truths, and a story that challenges everything we think we know about status and dignity. The hotel was one of those places that most people only saw in glossy magazines. Crystal chandeliers hung above the marble floors, while the staff moved like shadows, trained never to disturb the aura of wealth that floated in the air. Guests here weren't just rich, they were untouchable. CEOs, celebrities, heirs of old fortunes. The kind of people who thought the world bent for them. Among the dozens of staff who worked silently in this palace of luxury was Amara. She wore the same uniform as everyone else, a neatly pressed blue dress, yellow gloves when cleaning, and a polite smile for every guest. But unlike the others, there was something about her that stood out. She moved with quiet grace, as if she didn't belong to the world of servitude she had been placed in. For most of her co-workers, the job was a means to make a living. For Amara, it was something else entirely. She had come to America only 2 years ago, having escaped a complicated past that few knew about. She carried her story silently, never letting it slip into conversations, while other maids would gossip. In the break room, Amara often sat alone, reading old paperback novels in languages that nobody around her understood. On that morning, she had been assigned to the luxury suite on the top floor. It belonged to a guest named Mr. Carter, a man whose presence commanded attention. He was young, for his wealth barely in his 30s, yet already a millionaire with investments stretching across continents. The staff whispered about him constantly. His sharp suits, his calculated silence, and the way he seemed to notice everything without ever speaking too much. Amara entered his suite with her cleaning cart, careful not to disturb his belongings. She polished the glass tables, replaced the flowers, and straightened the curtains. To her surprise, Mr. Carter hadn't left the room yet. He stood near the window, phone in hand, his gaze fixed outside on the bustling city below. For Amara, it was nothing unusual. Wealthy guests often ignored the staff, treating them as if they were invisible. She worked quickly, her hands steady. Until the hotel phone rang. She reached over and answered it out of habit, expecting a call from the front desk or laundry service. But as soon as she heard the voice on the other end, her tone changed. Without hesitation, Amara replied, not in English, not in Spanish, but in fluent, confident Dutch. Mr. Carter's head turned sharply. There was no mistaking it. The maid, who looked like any other hotel worker, had just spoken one of the rarest languages he knew ideally. Without hesitation, his eyes narrowed. For Amara, the call was brief. She listened carefully, nodded once, and softly responded before hanging up the phone. Her expression remained calm, but a flicker of emotion flitted across her eyes, the kind that revealed secrets long buried. Mr. Carter, however, had already noticed. That was the moment when curiosity took root inside him, because in his world nothing was ever as it seemed. And this maid, with her flawless Dutch, was about to become the most intriguing mystery he had encountered in years. The moment Amara placed the receiver back on its stand, the room seemed to shift. Mr. Carter, still by the window, had his eyes fixed on her. For a second she felt the weight of his stare pressing against her back. She forced herself to remain calm, wiping down the surface of a table as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside, her heart was racing. She knew she had made a mistake, a straightforward slip that could unravel everything she had worked so hard to hide. Mr. Carter cleared his throat softly. Dutch, he said, his voice calm but sharp. That was Dutch, wasn't it? Amara froze for the most minor second, then turned to him with a polite smile. Yes, sir, just a personal call. Her tone was measured and respectful, but her eyes betrayed nothing. Years of practice had taught her how to wear that mask, the mask of someone ordinary, someone invisible. Carter, however, was not convinced. In his world, every detail mattered. He had built empires on observation, on noticing things others ignored. And a hotel maid speaking Dutch fluently was no small detail. As Amara exited the room, pushing her cart into the hallway. Carter's curiosity grew stronger. He replayed her words in his mind, the ease with which she spoke, the subtle confidence in her tone. He knew Dutch himself, though not perfectly. He had lived in Amsterdam for a short time during one of his earlier ventures. And what struck him wasn't just that she knew the language, it was how flawlessly she had spoken it, like someone who had lived and breathed it for years, downstairs. In the staff break room, whispers already surrounded Amara, a co-worker named Lisa, known for her sharp tongue, had overheard the tail end of the conversation and wasted no time gossiping. "Did you hear her? She was speaking some fancy language like she's royalty or something," Lisa sneered to the others. "Who does she think she is? Just because she can talk pretty doesn't change the fact that she's scrubbing toilets." Like the rest of us, Amara ignored the chatter. She had grown used to envy, to judgment. People often mistook silence for arrogance. But she had bigger worries now because she could feel Mr. Carter's eyes still following her, even when he wasn't there. That evening, as she left the hotel, the city lights glimmered across the skyline. Amara pulled her coat tighter against the cold, her thoughts heavy. The phone call had been from someone she hadn't heard from in years, someone who knew the truth she had buried. The Dutch words had slipped from her lips too naturally, too. Dangerously. Meanwhile, in his penthouse suite, Carter poured himself a glass of scotch, his mind still circling back to the maid. He was not a man who chased gossip, but something about her unsettled him. She didn't fit. She didn't belong in that uniform. He had seen her posture, her composure. That wasn't the body language of someone broken by labor, it was the discipline of someone raised differently. The next morning, Carter made a peculiar request. He asked the hotel manager if Amara could be assigned to his suite exclusively. The manager, eager to please such a wealthy client, agreed without hesitation. When Amara received the news, her stomach dropped. She knew this was the beginning of something dangerous. For people like Mr. Carter, curiosity was never harmless, it was a pursuit, and once it started, it didn't stop until every secret was unearthed. And Amara had secrets worth burying. The following days at the hotel felt different. Amara, who had once blended into the background, now found herself under an invisible spotlight. Every morning, her schedule included Mr. Carter's suite. And every morning, his sharp gaze followed her movements like a shadow. At first, he said little polite greetings, casual questions. But Amara knew better. He wasn't making conversation. He was studying her. One morning, as she changed the linens on the bed, Carter asked casually, "Where did you learn Dutch?" Amara's hands paused only for a fraction of a second before she replied, "From a book, sir. I like learning languages." Her answer was simple, believable, yet Carter leaned back in his chair, clearly unconvinced. "Fluent Dutch isn't something you pick up from a book," he murmured. His tone wasn't accusatory, but probing. Amara lowered her gaze. "Some people learn faster than others." The conversation ended there, but Carter's curiosity only deepened. Behind the hotel's polished walls, rumors continued to swirl. Staff whispered that Carter had taken an unusual interest in the maid. Some suggested scandal, others intrigue. But none of them guessed the truth, that Carter wasn't fascinated by romance but by mystery. He could sense that Amara was living a life built on half-truths. And men like him couldn't resist peeling back the layers. One evening, Amara left the hotel later than usual. Her shift had been extended, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her. As she stepped into the cold night air, she noticed a sleek black car parked near the curb. Inside, a silhouette lingered. Her heart skipped because she recognized the vehicle instantly. It wasn't Carter's. It belonged to someone from her past. The figure didn't get out, but Amara knew enough to understand what this meant. She had been found. The phone call in Dutch wasn't just a mistake, it was a signal. And now, the life she had worked so hard to build in silence was beginning to crack open. Back in his suite, Carter pored over documents, distracted yet restless. He had made a few discreet inquiries of his own. Using contacts, he had traced fragments. of Amara's past enrollment records from a European university, traces of her family name linked to businesses in The Hague, and then sudden silence. A name erased, a family fortune gone. As though history had been deliberately buried, the realization hit him. This was no ordinary maid. She was hiding from something far larger than him. The next morning, when Amara entered his suite, Carter didn't ask questions. Instead, he watched as she placed fresh flowers on the table. Finally, he spoke softly. You know, sometimes the things we run from catch up to us, no matter how far we go.